Okay, it looks like it's that time. Aloha, everyone, or as our friends from Palau say, Ali, and welcome to a special presentation hosted by Maui Nui Marine Resource Council on the Palau Pledge and visitor fee, a concept to help Maui address over-tourism. And we are all very excited that you're here. I'm Darla Palmer Ellingson, your MC, and I'm also the local radio show producer and host for Island Environment 360, Maui's only commercially broadcast public affairs show on environmental and related Hawaiian cultural topics, aired on the stations of H Hawaii Media. Tonight's presentation is part of Maui Nui Marine Resource Council's monthly Know Your Ocean Speaker Series, usually held on the first Wednesday of each month at 5:30 p.m. via Zoom. The monthly series is supported by the County of Maui Mayor's Office of Economic Development. And just a couple of things before we get going here. You'll notice that your microphone is on mute. Please keep it on mute during the presentation to avoid distractions. We do, though, really invite you to submit questions, and there's a Q&A feature. If you're joining us on Zoom, just mouse over the bottom of your screen and you'll see that Q&A button, and you can type in your questions, and we'll leave time at the end of the presentation to answer your questions. And now it is my pleasure to introduce you to our presenters who hold key roles on the Palau Pledge team, Jennifer Gibbons and Adora Nobuo. Welcome, Jennifer and Adora. I think they're here with us. There they are. Well, thank you for being here. I know we've got a video on the Palau Pledge, so let's jump into that first, and then we'll go into the presentations.
Now, if you're heading to the Pacific island of Palau, you'll be signing up to a new pledge.
Human impact on Earth's environment is one of the biggest challenges facing the world today. The small island nation of Palau was feeling these impacts acutely. Tourists were damaging reefs, littering oceans, and poaching protected species, their careless behavior magnified by large numbers. But how could a small local population with limited resources police the high volume of visitors? What if we made the tourists police themselves? Introducing the Palau Pledge, a first-of-its-kind immigration policy for good. All visitors now need to sign an environmental pledge to gain admittance into Palau. Stamped into the passport of international arrivals, the pledge is a formal promise to Palau's children.
Children of Palau,
I take this pledge
to preserve and protect your beautiful and unique island home.
To implement this policy, government, the tourist industry, and citizens were brought together.
Well, it looks like we've got a little bit of technical difficulty there with that video. I'm not sure if Meredith is trying to bring it back up.
Yeah, let me give it a try.
But we didn't stop at the passport stamp. We redesigned the tourism experience via a website, an in-flight film, a passport insert, local education, business accreditation, signage, penalties, and collateral. Launched at the UN, the Palau Pledge has been praised by international leaders and groups. Influencers helped inspire people to take the pledge online in solidarity with Palau.
Are you already seeing tourists behaving differently?
The awareness level is very high.
The reaction on social media has been widespread.
The Palau Pledge has raised global awareness of the responsibility this generation has to the next. but its biggest impact is local in Palau.
I hope my children can see the beautiful place as I see today.
All right. Well, that was, I think we got most of that video in. And I wanted to introduce you to our first speaker. Her name is Jennifer Gibbons, who is the Palau Legacy Project co-founder. Jennifer has more than a decade of strategic marketing and project management experience in New York, Guam, and Palau. Most recently, Jennifer held the position of executive director of the Palau Chamber of Commerce, where she spearheaded the first independent presidential debates and economic symposium to develop better collaboration between the public and private sectors. And with that, I'm going to welcome you, Jennifer, and turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. We're really pleased that our little project has garnered your attention, Maui being an amazing destination. I wanted to share that video from the start because I think we always need to sort of think about the end in mind. Where did we want to be? This project case study is really demonstrating where we ended up. The work itself began really with the core bedrock of the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. So while working with the Chamber of Commerce, in parallel, I had a gig with the Pew Charitable Trust, where we were supporting a campaign to create the first fully protected exclusive economic zone, or EEZ, of a country. So that piece of legislation passed during the last administration in 2015. Born out of that is really this strong desire to conserve our tourism assets. And as you can see, our background is these beautiful corals. And one of the challenges of having most of your economy dependent on nature is that we need to protect that nature. Industry can come in quite quickly to showcase it, to get consumers excited about it. But there are different kinds of consumers. There are consumers who treat it like a park, like Disneyland, and you can touch things and take things. But we needed to find a way to be able to develop and have that economic benefit of tourism, but protecting that tourism asset. So at the core of everything that we do, we began with the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. And there's a team of us who are not conservationists or environmentalists, but we are people who lived here, who have experiences outside of Palau, and specifically marketing communication experience, where we felt we can bring that kind of solution to the challenges that we were experiencing in Palau. I'd first like to just share that I'm actually Palauan, but my formative years of high school and college were in California. And then my career after that was in New York. So even though I don't have an accent, my heart is very much here in Palau, and I moved back always assuming that I would be doing something that would take whatever skill set I developed and try to apply it proactively here in Palau. And I think there are a lot of us who sort of feel this way, protecting our space and protecting the way of life that our culture has imbued in us. So one of the many questions that we get asked is how we got started, and the provocative sort of headline of this particular talk, Palau Pledge and then a fee. First and foremost, the Palau Pledge is not a fee. It began really to try a different approach to talking to the visitors and explaining to them that our culture, in order to have survived hundreds and hundreds of years, has really integrated itself into its space, understanding its space, knowing the space, understanding when we've applied a lot of stress to our island, whether it's on land or in the ocean. So you may hear often this word bul. It's a Palauan tool that chiefs have in order to put a moratorium on an activity or a space or a place. So growing up, my idea of a bul was at 10 o'clock or at midnight, we weren't allowed to go out if you're under 18. If you're underage, the Koror Chief Ibadul had put out a bul that said kids under 18 could not be running around town. And so that's my understanding, is if the Rubak or the High Chief says that there's a bul on an activity, you have to then take responsibility and self-police. And so born out of that is the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. So when the Marine Sanctuary was created, there was a sense of, yeah, this absolutely makes sense. If we start seeing that there are lower fish stocks, if we start seeing abuse on the reef, or if we start seeing behavior that is not consistent with preservation for future generations, then the chiefs can put out a bul. And that's what they did. We actually had all of the chiefs of the High Chiefs of Palau sign on to creating the Palau National Marine Sanctuary. Subsequent to that legislation and off of that platform, I'd be remiss not to mention Laura Clark, who's based in Sydney, Nicole Fagan, who is based in Boston, and Nanae Singio, who's married to my cousin, but is based in Tokyo. All of us were here in Palau at that time where the Marine Sanctuary had been created, but there was this large influx, a very acute influx of visitors who just didn't understand what the bul or Palau National Marine Sanctuary represented. So all of us have communications or marketing backgrounds. We got together and said, look, we can apply our skill set to address this challenge. And that's where the Palau Pledge was born. And it's referred to as an eco pledge. For us, it's about how do we protect our culture? How do we protect our assets? And it came from a bedrock of how do we use that already existing Palauan culture to promote this thinking of protecting our children's future. And that's where we came through and the Palau Pledge was created. We never, ever expected that you would be able to see a case study video that then went to Cannes and won and win the Grand Prix, the initial Grand Prix for United Nations SDG, Clio Awards. We never thought we'd beat out Burger King or Google or any of these other large corporations who spend so much resource behind the marketing, behind the media buy. And that's why you see that in the case study video. It's earned media with zero media spend. So that is the power of a good idea that comes from the heart. And that is a bedrock of everybody's feeling about how to push forward this conservation with development and economic outcomes. Really, it's about how do we protect that tourism asset. One of the things I wanted to talk about too is that the work of Palau Pledge is not funded by government. We have very fortunately, because we have some international founders who used to live in Palau, but now are in their careers back in running chief marketing officer. Nanae is chief marketing officer over at Eli Lilly in Japan. Nicole is the head of accounts at a large advertising agency in Boston. Is that we're able to find friends in our space who can help promote and support the work. So it's been very much a project that is driven by all of us feeling very strongly about conservation and protection of culture and protection of place. I do have a colleague here, Adora, who will share with you the depth of the work. But the thinking is it has to go beyond just that stamp. The stamp was a way to emotionally connect to the visitor, but also do it in an official way. Palau has many legislations and fees and fines that you can assess if someone or a tour operator or a visitor, if they do something harmful. The challenge is culturally, it's very difficult for us to say, no, don't do that. It is easier for us to sort of say, here's a pledge that you took. It's in your passport. It's literally your arrival visa on demand. You've signed it, and now can you just be reminded that you need to be gentle with the space, gentle with the people. So I think I'd like to sort of end there. I'd love to get into the Q&A part to it, but more than just a stamp, there is work behind the scenes working with a whole of government approach where we're able to connect with different parts of the Palau government to push forward the institutionalization of this kind of thinking, of the excitement around how do we take something that's very emotive and pass this on to the visitor. And there's a hope that the experience and the journey that you have when you visit Palau will also give you the idea that when you go back home, you too have a responsibility to your space, to your place. So there's a saying in Palau, you have to look back at where you came from, at your home and how it's situated before you can go out and start proselytizing or preaching or talking about what you do. And we hope that when visitors visit Palau and have that experience, that they can go home and understand that they have a part in this movement to really make sure that you're connected to your space, you're connected to your place, and that you too have a part in making sure that you're conserving and making sure that you're doing it not just for the sake of conservation, but you're actually doing it because it's either good business, it's good for your health, it's good for your community. So thinking really outside of yourself and taking personal action in that movement. And you see at the end of the video that we had a lot of folks, quite prominent folks, sign the pledge. It took us a year to get all of those pledges and then coordinate them for the launch. And, you know, leaping off of Leonardo DiCaprio's social media or John Kerry's social media, Queen Noor's social media, all of that work came from a really close and cordial relationship with the president of Palau and his team, who were facilitating our ability to be able to get that level of attention, because we just didn't have the media spend. And so I think it's a testament to being able to tap into everybody's a sense of responsibility and desire to do good. So I'll pass it back on to Darla and see where we can go from there. Hope we have a lot of exciting questions.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, or Sue Long, if I have my Palauan correct for thank you. Next, we are going to turn to Adora Nobuo, who joined the Friends of Palau National Marine Sanctuary and the Palau Pledge team in 2019. She is passionate about preserving the environment of Palau, which our culture and traditions promote. Currently, Adora is working with businesses to make sustainable business practices a habit through a program soon to launch as the Palau Business Pledge. She also works in school programs and speaks at community engagements to promote the Palau Pledge that supports the Palau National Marine Sanctuary and Palau's conservation ethos. Adora's work experience includes being the Palau National Congress and working with the passage of PNMS PNMS law, working as the executive director for the Palau Chamber of Commerce, promoting the interests and private businesses as a public relations manager and counselor at the Palau Community College. Welcome again, Adora. We are so looking forward to your presentation.
Thank you, Darla. And so I'm just going to continue on with what Jennifer had been speaking about, the Palau Pledge. And this is the second part, or what we call phase 2 of the Palau Pledge. So the first part was getting the visitors to really get informed of what our culture and what our children needed from them when they come and visit Palau. The Palau Business Certification Program is designed to engage businesses to adopt sustainable practices within Palau and become certified as Palau Business Pledge businesses, where they will then translate and then start doing activities, promoting activities that are sustainable, and will continue to promote and encourage conservation of our environment and protect our environment. So what is, if you can go to the next slide, what is the Palau Business Pledge? It is an initiative to help businesses be key drivers of sustainability. How does it work? We require businesses to reduce their impact on the environment through certification requirements. One of the things that Jennifer talked about is the whole of government. So in Palau, the government of Palau is the biggest employer because there are more people working for the government than there are in the private businesses. So we want to take this concept of the whole of the government and work with the government of Palau as a business, and also with the private sectors in getting them to be on board to reduce their energy waste, to reduce their water waste, or we should say waste management and energy management, and also to do waste management in terms of waste segregation. So each year as we go through the criteria, we will build up on each program that we're going to address as a campaign for businesses to get on board. And how this works for them is that they will become part of the Palau Business Pledge certification program. They sign on and they receive a welcome pack that gives them the criteria or that they need to do in order for them to become certified. And they have to submit a sustainability report to the Bureau of Tourism. So again, the Palau Pledge and the Bureau of Tourism, which is government, are working together in a public-private partnership. And this is where we can hopefully encourage the whole of government approach to continue embedding the sustainability practices, not only for the private businesses, but also for the government. And so our outcomes, if you go to the next slide, is we want to be able to have a program that highlights businesses who promote sustainability practices. And this is done through the website of Palau Pledge, through activities that we're doing, especially with the new with the new project that we're working on, the carbon calculator that's going to be showcased in our oceans. We're hoping that these will encourage businesses to get involved, and then they can be highlighted as businesses who promote sustainability practices. Also, we have the opportunity to highlight businesses that contribute positively to the local community through their sustainability activities. And so, again, corporate responsibility is also very important, not only for businesses to promote the environment and the preservation of our environment, but also to get them to be aware of how they are having an impact on our environment. Yes, we want to have the visitors come, and we're educating them on better behaviors, but it doesn't only stop with the visitors. It also needs to be able to connect the businesses that provide the services to the visitors to also promote sustainability activities. And that's where we're hoping to have an impact in our community. And so really the Palau Business Pledge is just a phase 2 of the Palau Pledge. And we're hoping that through this, we will get both visitors and the community to be able to continue our sustainable efforts in maintaining our pristine paradise Palau for our future generations. And that will be all for now. Darla, back to you.
Okay, well, I was busy taking notes while you were talking. It was really, really interesting. And I did want to encourage people to use that Q&A feature. I think if you're on Facebook, you can put some messages in the chat if you have any questions. And, you know, that was, I mean, I was so enthralled listening to you. I'm like madly scribbling notes here because, you know, as you know, we have a big concern in the entire Maui community here over tourism. So I wanted to open this up to both of you, and I'll start off with a question. After the initial presentations on our island of the Palau Pledge, I think it really touched the hearts of a lot of people here. And there's a lot of groups that are talking about some sort of movement in this direction. And I guess the concern is that it looks like they're separate efforts. So do you have any advice for us as far as a coordinated effort or anything from your experience that you can add to this?
I'd like to chime in on that question, if that's okay. I think having a consistent purpose and having that be your core for doing the work is critical for all parties involved. Just taking the example of how we started the Palau Pledge, I was working as a volunteer director for the Chamber of Commerce. Nanae was at the Visitors Authority. Nicole was working, volunteering with youth in Palau. And Laura was also doing remote work from Palau in her marketing space. And all of us have very different personalities, different experiences, but we came together with a vision and a purpose that was very, very specific, which is how do we leverage what we know to be the strong desire to protect this tourism asset, but make sure that in that protection, we are consistently talking the same language, communicating to the visitor in the same way. So we came at it from different places, but we had a consistency of purpose that propelled us to do the work. And I think that's the critical piece. You can be from different places and have sort of different outlook. So for example, the folks that were working in government on the National Marine Sanctuary were kind of like, oh, what does this have anything to do with Marine Sanctuary? The Marine Sanctuary is 12 to 20 miles beyond the beachhead. So it has nothing to do with tourism. In fact, the tourist is never going to see it. Well, that's true. And we had to convince those folks that that ethos of what the bull represents is what's drawing the visitor to come to Palau. But by the way, if we don't protect that outer donut part of the marine sanctuary, then what happens within the nearshore area becomes problematic. They're all interconnected. You might not see the downstream effect instantaneously, so it's hard to handle, but in fact, it has a direct effect on the reef, the sustainability of good, healthy reef systems. And also we have climate change as a real issue. You know, coral bleaching is no joke. People are going to be bummed out if they come to Palau and they see that the coral bleaching has occurred. Well, you can minimize coral bleaching with excellent conservation and biodiversity preservation. If you have a very diverse ecosystem, you're able to survive these hiccups in time where the temperature of the ocean gets to a point where coral are challenged to survive and have to go deeper to cooler waters in order to thrive. It's the same thing with sport fishing. The sport fishermen were like, this is great. We troll. This is a good thing. You know, Kona has this massive billfish tournament, and you can't have an internationally acclaimed tournament if you don't have fish to catch. And
Right.
if people don't have the fish. So even though you had the Palau Sport Fishing Association, who these guys only care about, I want to go out and catch fish. And you had the folks in the marine sanctuary and conservation space who were like, oh, the marine sanctuary is so far away. What we learned is that consumers actually wanted to come to a destination that authentically demonstrated conservation as a priority for them. We proved it out with market research, literally. I mentioned our partner, Nanae. She's before her moving to Palau, she was a brand manager at Pantene at Procter & Gamble. So what's the first thing you do? You do market research to understand who's the consumer, and you try to understand what's driving them to visit your space, your destination, or buy your product. And we learned that having a Palau National Marine Sanctuary literally propelled the consumer choice beyond all other competitors. It made Palau unique. And so you had someone who was in a very tourism space promoting this asset protection activity.
Can you tell us how you assessed what the visitor interest was? Was it through survey, or what method did you use?
Literally what we did was just take what any corporation would do. In my past life, I used to drive consumer satisfaction delivery and experience at TD Bank Financial Group. So you have to interview a robust number of people, and you have to have them be targeted. It's sort of a basic in any corporation. You need to know what the customer thinks. So we just applied that sort of, that's what every corporation does to drive sales onto this problem, and said, hey, if we had this marine sanctuary, would you choose Palau over other destinations? And the answer was resoundingly yes.
That's amazing. You know, you mentioned climate change, and we did have a question come in. Have you had any success getting locals on board with climate change policy or actions? There's still people in Hawaii who are skeptical about climate change. Do your sustainability reports? Oh, I think that's going to be a separate question. So let's just go with that question first.
Well, luckily we're partnered up with fishermen. Yeah, so part of our board, even the board for Friends of the Marine Sanctuary, Palau Pledge, 3 of them are avid, maybe rabid would be a better word, sport fishermen. They're the first to tell you that there's something going on out there. So at the beginning, when I said you trying to get our visitors to be as close to the space as we are as Palauans, if you're close to your space, you can see that there's climate change. Now you can argue as to what's causing that, and that's fine, but the reality is there is something that's changing, and people know it. They see it not only in the ocean, in the bleaching, they see it also in the fishery stocks, they see it also in their gardens. We have lots of taro patches. It's part of our culture to grow taro, as it is in Hawaii, and it has a material effect on how you grow your gardens and you grow your taro patches or your farms. So that's part of the advantage of being so close to nature, is that it's important that science has proven it out, but we kind of already had the feeling because we see it happening.
Okay.
And islanders always see it happening, right? We're so close to it.
There's a part two of this question for Adora, but I wanted to actually ask you one thing about what you said about the fishing community participating. So how are they encouraged not to fish and well, I guess you've protected the areas and there was some agreement with the fishing community when you're creating the area that's protected. Am I kind of getting that right? So you've created this area of protection, no fishing in there, and now they've agreed to that and they're fishing elsewhere.
Well, the interesting thing is where the Marine Sanctuary campaign began was during the October 24th, 2014 Wahoo Classic. The first people to have signed the petition to create the Marine Sanctuary were the participants, the over 150 participants of that fishing derby.
Wow.
So it's really been driven by people who rely on it for their livelihoods.
Right. We could probably do a whole show just about that part of it. So Adora, the second part of this question is, do your sustainability reports for businesses include climate change impacts? Do they have to report on that, or is that included?
So the sustainability report will actually ask about things regarding waste management, energy use meaning fuel and how they consume energy, and water use management. And so again, we tie the waste segregation and energy use and water use to climate. And that's why we are also trying to get the businesses to become involved in the carbon offset project. Because if they understand that all these things that they're doing, including segregating their trash, does have an effect on the carbon being released to the air. And so again, it does tie into climate change, but in a different form, where we're asking them to do this so that we know what their carbon emissions are and how they can offset.
Okay, that really makes sense. I did want to remind folks to, if you're on Zoom, to use the Q&A feature. I'm trying to watch the chat and the Q&A both, but I'm not that talented, so use that Q&A feature. We had a attendee ask, where do the main recurring sources of funding for this project come from?
So our very first source of funding came from a local fundraising event. So that's the local community. Our very first $25,000 came from the local community. That propelled us to ask businesses to activate the work that we were doing, and the beneficiaries of this will be businesses. So businesses are quite closely tied to our success. So that's sort of first and foremost, and it's a way to engender sort of participation. It's not just contributing because you're getting a tax break, but you're making a choice to contribute to this activity over others. Second is we have had really amazing support from a company called Host Havas. Havas is the third largest advertising agency in the world. They have been our partner from the start. And this is really just leveraging our friendships, personal relationships. We went to them and said, hey, we have a problem we have to solve. We think that good design and communication strategy could be a solution. And we'd like your help. And so their contribution, while not financial, has been getting access to all of their creatives, all of their accounts folks, both internationally and in Australia, where the office that we work with directly. And so we've been getting a lot of in-kind contribution. And then unusually, we have, again, tapped into our network. We have some friends who are in media who were very gracious and gave us a large $100,000 donation. So that got us propelled to basically produce the Palau Pledge design. So while Havas gave us all the technical support, we needed money to actually print and make the stamp and print the brochures and print the posters, the signage. And those all are coming from private sector, private contributions. We have a very strong relationship with the Pew Charitable Trusts, who've been fantastic. This is absolutely outside of their wheelhouse, but they've been able to connect us to others who can support us. And that actually is quite an important relationship. If I were to give advice to someone who needs those resources, tap into your own personal network, but also if you don't ask, you don't get. And it's amazing how, even though Pew works on conservation and this is not directly tied to the work that they're doing, they've been very supportive in terms of getting us connected to people who can support us. And so those types of relationships matter. The Havas relationship has been extremely fruitful. Winning the first UN SDG Con award connected us to prize money. So we were able to access the prize money to have staff. Before we were just volunteers. The founders continue to be volunteers, unpaid. So you can see that your original question was around how do you get desperate sort of interests to come together. You have to have a purpose. You have to have the same purpose in mind, and then it becomes a passion project. And it's extremely powerful when you have that purpose in mind.
One of the questions that had come up before was about a fee-based system for Maui, an environmental fee. And does, in your opinion, attaching a fee to this, if we were to do a similar program, does that make people take it more seriously? Does it create buy-in? What do you think?
I think you sort of have to, because we don't have a fee. I'm going to kind of just give you my personal opinion. I don't have the data to kind of drive this thinking, but our experience has been the consumer change in behavior is really around their strong desire to be on board with the movement to build back better or to protect the space. I would argue that you could leverage that to get fees, but we just don't have that experience in Palau. There isn't a fee associated with the Palau Pledge and signing the pledge. We will in future have a carbon offsetting component that will, if you choose to offset, it's a voluntary piece. If you choose to offset, the idea is that you would have a fee that's tied to that, and then you would have literally a sequestration program that'll say you had how many tons of carbon created, and you can literally offset it through this third party independently certified sequestration site. So we're trying to make it very, very personal, that you have a direct responsibility to the space in place. And we expect that carbon offset is not just about paying a fee, but really asking you to walk to your restaurant from your hotel instead of taking a taxi. Instead of taking a long shower, maybe you can consider not taking a long shower, and getting you to know that part of your experience in being on an island is you're kind of living here for a little bit, and droughts are a real thing. If it doesn't rain for 3 weeks, we all go, ooh, well, what are we going to do? Luckily, those are are few and far between. However, they're getting to be more frequent, longer, and more dire. So I can say it's few and far between, but the reality is we're starting to see that the monsoon season isn't really at the same time it used to be before. We can expect that in June we'll have torrential rains, but that isn't always happening at the moment. And so that has really material impact to the tourism sector.
Sure. I wanted to kind of ask a similar question of Adora. We're getting more money questions coming in. And I think, it might be a little bit of a cultural difference, where, we have a lot of volunteerism through nonprofits, but the directors expect to get paid. So I was interested, Adora, in the business pledge that's coming out. It seems like there's a great benefit to businesses that participate. There's a lot of really positive publicity for them for doing the right thing. So is there any kind of sponsorship or fee or anything that is planned on the business end?
So Jen, can you go on mute?
I can chime in on that front.
Okay. So no, we will not be asking for any fee from the businesses that are going to be participating in the Palau Business Pledge. What we're offering is that you make the decision that you want to become a business that is promoting sustainability practices and activities. And then that will get you to a level where the Palau Pledge is now going to be a platform that you can showcase, because everyone knows about Palau Pledge and it's been recognized worldwide. And so it's a way for them to say, okay, we're getting on the bandwagon. We're going to do this because we want to do what's right for Palau, even though we don't have to pay for anything or become members. What we get is the satisfaction of we're going to have visitors come that sees us as part of the solution, not part of the problem. And so again, yes, for a lot of certification programs, it's very competitive, and it's what did Xavier Font say? He said it's very competitive.
10%.
And 10%
uptake is low.
Yes, uptake is low. And so what we're doing is we want to encourage businesses to be able to participate because it is the right thing to do. It's in their heart for them to do.
But it also makes good business sense, right? If you're tracking your water usage, I'll give you an example, not to be named, but there's a tour company here who with the downturn, the current situation in Palau is that we don't have any visitors at the moment with COVID, and we have very limited air travel to Palau. So they had to go into sort of a hibernation mode, and they couldn't believe they were still paying a couple of $1,000s a month on water. They didn't understand. So they had to go and figure out where the leak was. They were thinking it was an accounting error at the utilities company. Well, the reality is they had a massive leak. As soon as they shut it down, all of a sudden their water prices and fees went down. And so simple things like that are amazingly high impact. And I think maybe, Darla, we talked about this before. We want to make trash sexy again, if it ever was. But waste management
is to me
is an important thing to be mindful of. The waste can go into the ocean. We get a lot of marine debris here in Palau. I'm not sure if you see it in very much in Maui, but in our northern islands and our eastern facing islands, we get tons and tons of waste. And you can go shopping for Azoris on these places. You'll have like any kind of style you want, you can get it. And that's part of the challenge is it's bad, not only bad for the environment, it's bad for us. It's not healthy. And so while it doesn't seem sexy to talk about trash, the reality is it is so critical to being a sustainable company, because it costs money to get your trash hauled away. If you're able to segregate it and just put out what needs to go to the dump, then that's significant reduction in costs. It's the same with water, and it's the same with power.
Right.
So these types of practices, we wanted to be able to have the community participate in it. We have a colleague, his name is Xavier Fun. He's quite famous in the sustainability space, and he had said, look, only 10% on an island, only about 10% of businesses will sign on to these international certifications. And typically it's going to be somebody who's Western. It's not going to be a Palauan. It's not going to be an island business, because it doesn't align with sort of our culture and how we do things. And it's difficult to do reports. And we learned from that, and we just said, okay, so now we're going to go bit by bit. We're going to bite off what we can chew, and take our wins where we can. So the pledge is not just sort of this nice marketing exercise. It really has substance, and you have to work on it. It's like a relationship. You got to be dating your partner all the time. So we got to be dating businesses all the time.
Right. I just wanted to kind of emphasize what we just talked about for the people on Maui, that this is really a different way of looking at the problem, where you are making an emotional connection and you want people to participate because they want to participate. And you do have funding sources, but it's not coming from the participants at this point in time. So I just think that that's something that we really need to think about here. And I'm going to move on to the next question. This is another two-part question. So the welcome video on the Palau Pledge, is that played on airplanes?
Yeah, it's one of the ways that we needed to, we felt we needed to alert visitors that they were going to be signing their passport, because that's a little bit of an unusual thing, was to find a way to communicate to them that this is a new policy and prepare them for that arrival. But we thought, why just have a video that says you're going to sign something in your passport? Let's make it integrate culture. So that giant video gets played by our partner airlines on arrival. And it's been really interesting to see who took that video and started playing, which airline partners were very open to it, and which airline partners struggled through that process or felt like it was not to be followed. We had to create a piece of legislation that said they had to play the video. So that was less than a year after the Palau Pledge was launched, but now they're all mandated to do it. So we had some early adopters, and that is a way to sort of, in a nice and gentle way, demonstrate culture. The giant is a harkens back to a traditional story about excess, and then the ethos of conservation and community that comes out of that video.
Okay, well, you answered the second part of the question, which is how to garner that participation. And the commenter here said that we had an arrival video for tourists, which was useful. But since the airlines have said that the airtime is too valuable, which they
want you to pay.
Yeah, well, I do recall, not seeing that video on my last flight, but going to New Zealand right before the COVID shutdown. Oh my gosh, you learned so much about the culture and environment on that plane. You couldn't avoid it. So I think that's really a good strategy.
Darla, I think that's also I don't know if you have any government policy folks here, but it speaks to what the destination wants. And partnering with partners who have aligned purpose. And so, I'm going to call out China Airlines because they've been fantastic from the beginning, but also they are a particularly good airline. They have a carbon offsetting mechanism that you can tap into. So it's really finding partners that are aligned to what you want to create as an experience for the destination. So starting from there, our ethos comes from our concept of the bull. And we'd like for you to be partners with us in that way. And it's okay if there's a big player, United, who might not want to be a part of that. It's okay. But guess what? We're going to always say great things about China Airlines and what they do for us. So, the different, there's different categories that make up your destination arrivals. And there are partners who are better and there are partners who are maybe disappointing, but you still work on them and try to get them on board.
Interesting. Hey, I'm going to go back to Adora here for this next question. Our friend Mark Dicos is asking about, what the promotion to businesses that how do they report their impact? Can you talk a little bit about the plans for measuring their positive impacts?
Do you want me to take that one, Adora? I want you to use the example of waste, if you would. At this point, we're trialing an actual calculator for them to be able to measure their impact. And so that's part of what we were hoping to showcase at COP26 in Glasgow, as well as the Our Ocean Conference that's happening here in Palau in February. But I'd love for Adora to give the example of our companies that have helped us develop this, because I think one of the things that, and she's been cut off of the video, but we'll keep going. One of the things that has been particularly helpful is just seeing the value at the end of the day when you segregate trash or you reduce your water consumption. I think Adora can talk about that case in point. Are you back on?
Sorry, yes, I'm back on. Okay, weak internet, sorry people. So we did a pilot study on the pilot businesses that are part of this project. And one of the things that I was really interested in is getting them to segregate their trash so that they can understand the impact that they're having. So within a span of 3 months, we were able to, out of the 7 businesses, we were able to collect 22.9 kilograms of waste that went to the landfill, and we were able to collect 267.6 kilograms of waste that went to be recycled, redeemed, and then turned into biofuel. And so this is just within 3 months of 7 businesses that are in a time when it's not, they didn't have visitors or a lot of activity going on in their businesses. So with this result, they were able to see how they can make a positive impact to the landfill by just realizing how they can segregate their trash into the different categories, getting them to the appropriate places, and all that's going to the landfill is only this much. And so these kind of things, and then we also will then turn it into how they can conserve energy, how they conserve water, and how this will have an impact on their businesses in terms of how much they spend or how much they save. And so these are what we're using to inform them.
Okay, very good. So Michelle is asking a really interesting question. Have you had anybody give negative feedback or get angry or even refuse to sign the pledge?
We have only heard of less than 5 people complaining about it. It's a rounding error. Most people, from the immigration officers, what we're hearing from them, and I'd like to just preface that by saying this is when we had a lot of visitors. What we hear from them is more about the fact that they want to take their picture signing the stamp or putting the stamp in their passport. So it's less about not wanting to sign the pledge and more about, can I get a selfie with this thing? Can I get a picture with you putting the stamp in? Can I get one that's blank? So there's always going to be that one sourpuss, but luckily there's not very many of them.
Is there a kids version?
No, it's just one. It is an official stamp in the passport. So
Okay.
there isn't sort of, we actually have to control the stamp itself.
Okay.
It can't be used. We can't create other stamps.
Sure, you can't like stamp their hand or anything
No,
like that.
no.
Okay.
Although if they asked, they probably would get it.
But they do
So-
have it in 5 different languages.
Oh, okay. Okay. So our friend Hannah Bernard says, Mahalo nui loa for your great work, inspirational. Do you have visitor numbers right now, or are you closed to tourism at the moment?
We do have visitor numbers. We can share them with you. They're a drop in the bucket.
Okay. Good time for planning.
Yes.
So this is kind of another tracking question from Jonah. What in-field metrics, such as fish numbers, coral health, etc., have you tracked to measure the impact of the Palau Pledge, and what are the results?
So we actually have an organization called the Palau Coral Reef Research Foundation that does track different sites in the CRRF, Coral Reef Research Foundation. There's 2 of them that track to these. For us, at the moment, without visitors, we're probably giving it a nice rest. A lot of these sites have not seen the hundreds of divers or snorkelers that they would normally. So we're seeing a lot more fish. Just anecdotally speaking, real time, it's one of those things where we're seeing much more sort of interesting behavior of fish because they don't have any predators out there, or they don't have any individuals in their space and disturbing them, like turtles in their space. So I would defer to the Coral Reef Research Foundation for that kind of information. I would hate to put words into their mouths.
Okay. You talked about legislation to protect the EEZ, and apparently there was some legislation regarding getting the video on the airplane. Is there any other bills that were put in place to make this all work?
Yeah, so when we're talking about the business pledge, there's a few more bills that came subsequent around plastics, around reef, sunscreen, a safe sunscreen. So if you're at the airport and you arrive today, you would see that there's an amnesty bill that we created so that you can put in your reef unsafe sunscreen, and we'll guide you to getting a reef safe sunscreen that's available here. Am I forgetting anything else, Adora? The Waste Management Center, there's a new one. So there's legislation, regulations that's pending to go through that the process of segregation. And if it's not a part of habit, businesses, and having run a business and being in the Chamber of Commerce, I hate seeing new regulations that I didn't have a chance to prepare for. And so the goal is that regulations coming out around, let's say, waste management would be sort of at the minimum requirement. But if you want to be Palau Pledge certified and be able to be a preferred provider or utilize the assets at trade shows or other events, you go to the next step. You do more than what the regulations ask you to. And so it's a way to prepare businesses in advance. So if it's part of the Palau Pledge certification, you pretty much are being alerted and to the fact that it's going to be in your regulations anywhere from 6 to a year downstream. So it's a way to reduce noise in the business community by advising them in advance, like getting them sorted out before the regulations become enforced.
Okay, we just got a couple more things. You mentioned earlier about voluntarily, suggesting to people that they walk to the restaurant instead of drive and so on. Are there things that are now off limits to visitors? Is there signage, or is there, actual rules and things in place around the island?
Yeah, actually, those rules have already been in place, and it was a matter of being challenged to enforce. And so the pledge is a platform with which to remind that these rules exist. And just a great example is Kura State. We don't let anybody go to any beach. If you are a visitor, you're allowed to go to, I believe, only 7 rock islands, but that's it. That we don't allow you to go to all the other rock islands. You need a special permit from not only the state, but also chiefs in the state. So these are really the pledge is really a way to prevent the bad behavior from occurring in the first place. So when we first sort of put out the concept to get approval from different parts of government, we really talked about it as a way to prevent, because it's less expensive than having to find someone and then enforce it, go to court, get the fee. That all costs money. It's easier to prevent the bad behavior from happening, and cheaper to prevent the bad behavior from happening in the first place.
Okay. I'm going to wrap this up with, there's several people that want to see the video again. Is there a place that they can watch the video? Oops, I think we lost your audio there.
Just Google Palau Pledge case study.
Okay.
And I'll put the link in the chat right now so everyone can see it.
Okay, great. Well, I appreciate that. And put it on Facebook as well. So, man, I'm so sad that we're out of time, because we could go on for quite a while. It was just amazing. Thank you so much, both of you. Su Long. And Jennifer Gibbons, Adora, Nobuo, we're so grateful. All the work that you've done on Palau to protect your environment. We have so much to learn here from your example. And I did want to remind people that this event is part of Maui Nui Marine Resource Council's Know Your Ocean Speaker Series. And MNMRC is a nonprofit working for clean ocean water, healthy coral reefs, and abundant native fish for the islands of Maui Nui. With tourism on the increase, Maui Nui Marine Resource Council has a robust visitor education program. Our goal is to teach visitors to protect our local coral reefs while they snorkel, swim, dive, and paddle. Maui Nui Marine Resource Council has installed coral reef signs at 39 beach locations and large-scale window displays at Kahului Airport. There is an ongoing radio and print ad campaign, along with social media and digital display ads targeted at visitors who are on Maui. This educational effort is supported by the County of Maui Mayor's Office of Economic Development. In addition, Maui Nui Marine Resource Council is a co-founder and co-manager, along with the Nature Conservancy and West Maui Ridge to Reefs initiative, of a unique community-based ocean water quality monitoring program called Hui Oka Viola, which tests ocean water at 29 locations in South and West Maui every 3 weeks. With technology, Maui Nui Marine Resource Council is expanding the water quality data they're gathering to better identify causes of impaired ocean water quality along Maui shorelines. Ma'alaya is one of Maui's impaired water quality sites, suffering mostly from excessive sediment, which harms corals' ability to feed themselves and reproduce. Maui Nui Marine Resource Council is tackling this sediment pollution problem. In early 2020, Maui Nui Marine Resource Council launched its oyster project in Ma'alaya Harbor to use the filter feeding abilities of caged oysters to remove sediment from the water. The council is also working upslope in the adjoining Pohokea watershed to prevent sediment runoff into the harbor. Some of the work includes installing fire breaks and repairing large erosional features. We ask that you support these coral reef conservation programs with your tax-deductible donation to Maui Nui Marine Resource Council. And along with the satisfaction of making a difference, you'll also get to choose from some special swag offered as a thank you gift for your support. You can view and share this presentation on Facebook, It's at facebook.com/Maui Reefs. And you can also view this and past presentations on YouTube at Maui Reefs. Thanks to the County Maui Office of Economic Development, our sponsors and supporters like you who are making so much good work possible to protect our coral reefs. And on Sunday morning at 9 a.m., you'll be able to listen more with our guests here, our speakers from tonight. So we'll be talking again Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Thank you again so much for joining us this evening. So long, be well, take good care of yourself and each other and this beautiful island of Maui. Have a good evening. Bye, everyone.